Ladies and gentlemen, get on the edge of your seats because this is an Action Sports Jax special presentation. Storytellers of the 904.
The name is synonymous with baseball in Jacksonville. He might have been a pro ball player like some of his family members, but he was a bit wild and crazy, in his words. Instead, he made a life of hospitality for pro ball players and for millions of fans to party while they watch a game. His jovial nature and passion for baseball and business led to a school program where he read Casey at the Bat to the kids. And one of those readings led him to marrying his wife. We'll explain that one. He is one of the storytellers of the 904, former owner of the Jacksonville Suns. Say hello to Peter Bragan Jr., simply known as Pedro, wearing that Sun shirt. How you doing?
All right, Brent. It's great to be here.
How about that? Does that sum it up?
Pretty good. But
Right?
I'll tell you one thing there. I didn't read the poem. I memorized it and challenged them to memorize it.
But we're going to hear more about that.
The very first school I went to, I said, y'all need to memorize this poem. You can get a bat or a glove. And the little girl said, can you say it? I said, just worry about learning it. So I went home the next year. That was just a one-shot one spring. So that winter I went home and sat down, mainly during the pro playoffs. Had the book in front of me. When they'd go to a commercial, I'd look down and try to get two more lines. They had so damn many commercials. Within a 3 weeks or so of the playoffs, I was halfway done. So it kind of, pushed on through. But
oh, here we go. I knew this was going to be fun, and then 90 seconds in, I already know it will be. I have a feeling with some of the stories we're going to tell, and you're going to tell, I'm not going to talk much, that we might not get to the end game of where you are now. So update everybody what you're doing now in retirement. Are you enjoying it?
I'm having a ball. My wife and I built our dream home on the ocean in Ponte Vedra, and it's hard to get up and just, I have to pinch myself to believe I live in such a beautiful home. So I play golf at least twice a week, sometimes more. I try to go fishing every once in a while, but not as much as I would really like to. But I sold my boat, and it's just, it was too much of a hassle to keep the boat. But I enjoy. I garden. I love to
grow some tomatoes for us. Tomatoes.
I like. I'm just having a ball. I still, I was trying to start writing a book, and I never got too far on that. But that's still something I could. If I were to get my knee replaced or a foot surgery and couldn't get up for a while, that'd be a good way to get back into writing a book.
Yeah.
And I still have the dream of some kind of a history of professional baseball museum for Jacksonville. I got a U-Store full of stuff, and I am tired of paying that U-Store bill too. So I'd like to get it donated to the city and become part of a museum.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that and how you're still giving back to baseball in just a bit. You look fantastic. So Peter Bragan Jr., we appreciate him being in on Storytellers of the 904. Brent Martineau here. And let's go way back. You're an Alabama guy that somehow ended up in Jacksonville. Without going into year by year, can you give us a little bit of a summary of growing up in Alabama?
Well, I mean, when I was from about probably 8 years old to about 16 or 18, my Uncle Bobby was the manager in the big leagues. When I was youngest at 8 or 10, he was with the Pirates for a couple of years, and then he was with Cleveland for about one season. And then he became the manager of the Braves the last 3 or 4 years in Milwaukee and the first year and a half or something in Atlanta. So that made me a baseball boy, And plus, I was left-handed, and I could hit from the very beginning. My dad was left-handed. We were the only two left-handed Bragans, and I had several cousins that went into baseball, and we all played up through, several of us at least, through college and a couple into the minor leagues. So, yeah, I came by it naturally. But after I had given up that I wasn't going to play, I was trying to sell real estate in Birmingham, and my dad's younger brother, Jimmy, was president of the Southern League. And Dad and I went to lunch with him one day in Birmingham, probably about 81, 82. And he said, you know what you ought to do? And my dad had been a car dealer, but he had sold his interest in the new car dealership and was semi-retired at about 60. But he still, had some interest in businesses. And my uncle said, you ought to buy one of these Southern League baseball teams. You and your boy would have a good time running the team, and they're going to increase in value. So that kind of lit a fire under me. I said, I always wanted to be on the field, but if I'm going to be on this side of the fence, it'll still be fun to be around baseball.
Absolutely. So. We'll get into that part, but you said it, your baseball family, good player. What position were you primarily, and where did you end up? How good were you in high school? Where did you end up playing in college before you had a 2-week stint with the Dodgers in pro ball?
I was a left-handed first baseman in high school in Birmingham. I made All-State, and I had an offer from Georgia Tech, which my mother really wanted me to go there. She said, you'll be an engineer, get a good job the rest of your life. And Alabama and Auburn offered me scholarships. Alabama had, Bear would just send the defensive line coach over there for the spring. They played 16-game schedule. The conference, that was it.
Yeah.
Or maybe they played one team in Birmingham or something. But so my uncle said, sign, the Houston Astros offered me $500.
Oh, really?
My uncle hated
coming out of high school.
Yeah, hated Cal Smith. They had a lot of bad blood between them, and he said, "Don't sign with those Astros. Go to junior college. If you have one good year, you can sign with somebody else will be wanting you, or you can do it after 2 years. If you sign with Georgia Tech or Alabama, you can't go pro for 4 years, or 5 really." So I ended up going to junior college up here at South Georgia, Douglas, Georgia. Played 2 years there and had a couple of good. We beat Florida. We beat Manatee the first year and beat Miami-Dade the second year. Both upsets. We were just a little hicks from Georgia, and we knocked them out and got to go to Colorado for the National Junior College. And the first year we finished in third. And should have won it that year, I thought, but one of our better pitchers got shelled there. Fly balls in Colorado turn into home runs quick. But it was still, I had a great time with it, And then I left there and went to South Alabama to play for the famous Eddie Stanky, who had a heck of a program going at South Alabama at that time. But, it's been a wonderful life.
Yeah, so but you did have 2 weeks with the Dodgers, right?
Yeah, I went down to, Uncle Bobby got me down there in probably 72.
That would have been Vero Beach.
71, 2 or 3 to Vero Beach.
Yeah.
And the first few games, man, they were just big right-handers throwing hard. I was popping it. And then we got on that bus and went over to Clearwater and stayed over there for 3 or 4, and we ran into nothing but left-handers. And I was chasing those curves in the dirt. When we got back, they said, adios.
That was it.
It's time to go home, boy.
That was it. And then almost real estate, and then, of course, into this whole baseball thing that we're going to talk about. Just one more question about the family, because you said it. You have your cousins and uncles and every really big name in baseball. I mean, you guys have become a big name in terms of the Bragan, you and your dad, in Jacksonville. Big name in baseball. So you grew up around it. I mean, did you feel that your family was big in the sport of baseball? I mean, were you pretty popular in that sense?
Well, I mean, I was just, like I say, when I was 8 or 9 years old, everybody in my third grade class would say, hey, I saw your uncle, he's managing the Pirates. And,
so they knew.
And so, yeah, everybody knew that my uncle was a big league manager from about my 8th year to at least 16 or 18 when they fired him in Atlanta.
Yeah.
It was just part of in Birmingham, especially the Bragans in Birmingham were
big deal.
Big deal. Everybody knew a lot of people had played against them and as they came up and stuff.
Did you watch a lot of ball games at the old Rickwood, or did you go to any big league games?
The first big league game I went to was we drove over to Atlanta when Uncle Bobby got to be manager of the Braves.
So you were a little older.
I was probably 14 or 15. But, when I was littler, we lived right behind my grandmother's house. And on those Sunday afternoons, a lot of them, my dad would either be golfing or fishing. And after she made a big dinner, we'd go to church in the morning, come home, and then my cousin lived with her, was like a big brother. So the grandfather, Poppy, and after dinner would sit on the porch and smoke him a Camel or two, and then say, "Hey, boys, the Barons are home. Let's go. Y'all want to go?" And we'd load up in this big old red Pontiac he had and go out. If the Barons were home, we went to Rickwood. On the Sundays when the Barons weren't home, we went to BIR and saw them race. Before Bobby Allison was old enough, probably, but Red Farmer was there, and some of those names that went on into NASCAR.
Wow!
And some Sundays we saw racing, but if the Barons were home, we went to the baseball game. And I do remember my granddad would have a little pad here, and he would, you couldn't. There was no ESPN. I mean, sometimes he'd sit there at the house later on in the evening and call the Birmingham News Sports Department and say, "All right, you got a score out of Chicago?" But we'd be out there at Rickwood, and they'd put those scores for the whole big leagues out there on there. And he'd say, "Hey, little Pete, is that a 6 or an 8 they put up there in the third?" Because he couldn't see good enough anymore, and he wanted to know. He was checking he'd have him a few little bets on baseball there, But, yeah, it was a great experience going out there and getting to see, the real pros, and made you want to be on that field playing.
Absolutely. Rickwood, whoa, the history there is just tremendous when it comes to that. Then you get into from your dad saying, "Hey, maybe you should go buy a Southern League team," to actually doing it. And so
Uncle Jim said, "You ought to buy one of these." So within a few months, Chattanooga was for sale. We rode up to Chattanooga one day, and downtown Chattanooga was just all plywood on the windows and stuff. It was really in a bad way about 1981 or 2. And the ballpark was about like Durkee Field. It was bigger, but it was old and run down looking as the dickens, and just didn't seem like the right spot. So we went back to Birmingham and thought it over, and then I actually went to work for the Barons, for Art Clarkson at the Barons, trying to sell billboards and stuff and learn the inside of it. And for about not even a year, more like the whole off season up till when the season started. And then he had enough other help during the games, so I just, faded away and went back to trying to sell real estate there. But then Mr. Eliopoulos had like a quadruple bypass. Thought he had the family over for a big, maybe Thanksgiving dinner or something, and then later at night he said, "Give me a bicarbonate of soda. I feel a little digestion." But it ended up being a heart attack, and he had a quadruple bypass the next morning. And the doctors told him, you might need to get your affairs in order. This ain't good. And so he called Uncle Jimmy and said, "Find somebody to buy the Jacksonville Suns." And my Uncle Jim, that was probably like November, my Uncle Jim maneuvered it around and waited until March so we could come down here on the weekend. And Freddie Couples won it that year. I think that was probably the spring of '84. So we go to the ball. We drive down maybe Friday. We go to the ballpark Saturday morning, look it over. Daddy and Mr. Eliopoulos go in that second office at Old Wilson Park. Me and Uncle Jim are out there in the hall walking around a little bit up into the stands and stuff, and it wasn't 20 minutes. They come out and had a handshake deal ready. Wow. So Uncle Jim said, "Well, that's just wonderful. Come on, let's go to the golf course." And we went out to the TPC all day Saturday, and I think we went back Sunday. We might have went back and met them again at the ballpark Sunday morning to work on some more details, but real quick. And it was such a difference from looking at Chattanooga, because that's when Bay Meadows was just blowing up, building apartments and restaurants and everything. And all over Jacksonville. The old Wilson Park was pretty run down, but you could see a fresh coat of paint would do wonders for it. It hadn't been much attention spent on the upkeep and stuff. So we dug right in and went to work.
I don't think I've ever seen this, and maybe I have, but do you remember how much your dad paid for the Suns at that time?
About $400,000, 300 and something, but there was some where he put some money up front, and then Mr. Eliopoulos held a note for some of it. And then that summer, Mr. Eliopoulos' health was failing, and Dad would come down every month or so, the GM would call him and say, I got to get some cash to send them on the road. Enough people weren't buying tickets. They weren't bringing enough money in. So sometimes Daddy would come down here and give them 10 grand to have meal money and pay the hotel for the next road trip.
Keep it floating a little bit.
So that money got like an advance payment on that note. So it adjusted the total sales price a little down, because he was putting more money up front.
Well, Uncle Jimmy was right. Turns out it was a pretty good investment.
We weren't here 2 or 3 years. We were still running in the red. We were struggling to get in to sell enough tickets and ads to pay for the team travel and the stuff and the rent and everything we had to pay. And Memphis sold for $575,000. It was the new record for the Southern League at that point. And that probably wasn't later than '86, somewhere right in there. And I said, Uncle Jimmy had the right idea here, and they just kept going up over the years.
Yeah, give us a sense of when you got to Jacksonville. You just said Bay Meadows was starting to kind of blow up a little bit. Were people? It didn't sound like they were going to the games that much. I mean, what were they doing? It was obviously a big time college football town at that time.
Yeah,
Jacksonville University basketball and things like that were big, right? But
sure,
where was this minor league baseball franchise?
Well, I would
in the
stand
landscape?
by that roll-up gate at Wilson Park and say, thanks for coming, and hear ladies all the time say, I can't believe I let you talk me into coming down this nasty old ballpark again. I don't like this place. And then when you'd have a big Saturday night crowd, somebody would park up there around what used to be Florida Avenue. Now it's JP
Shadrick. Shout out. Yeah, I know. No, I've got Shadrick in my mind.
They changed Florida Avenue. But people would park up there and come walking back up at the end of the game saying, my car's jacked up on blocks and my tires are gone, or my battery's gone. The neighborhood wasn't that good.
Yeah.
It was still a lot of old houses and run down, and there was a drive-through liquor store right on the corner there where the fairgrounds are now, kind of, and it was just, it was hard to get people to come down for a baseball game, especially in July and August when it got hot.
Yeah, so
April and May was always pretty good.
Okay.
But later in the year in the old ballpark, so we started right in on Jake was the mayor then. We need a new ballpark, Jake. We need a new ballpark.
So
you were built one in Birmingham about '88. They built one in Charlotte. So I just knew eventually the powers that be in Jacksonville would build a new ballpark, but I didn't dream it would be all the way to 2002.
Yeah, that would take almost 20 years.
Yeah.
So people aren't coming to the ballpark. The ballpark's not great at the time. The city's not great in that area. Did you think about, or did the family think about flipping it because of some of these new marks at all, or that people were selling for? Or did you're like, we're going to see this through, or do you remember that at all?
I remember that my dad liked nothing better he loved hitting that golf ball, and he loved catching a fish, but he liked nothing in the world that he had ever done in his life better than sitting at the top of those stairs at Wilson Park and people coming up there and saying, how you doing, Mr. Bragan? What are they going to do tonight? Do you think we're going to win this game and stuff? He loved being the owner of the Jacksonville Suns more than he loved anything on this earth.
Yeah.
So there wasn't any way we could have wrote red ink for 10 more years and he wasn't going to sell. I mean, and I enjoyed it. I got to loving it myself, more and more and more. And I mean, our original plan was to come down here, get it running better than it had been. Obviously when Uncle Jimmy said you ought to get one of these Southern League ball teams, Daddy said, well, let's buy the Barons, because that was his home. And he knew people like W.W. Gay in Birmingham, and he knew people like Buck Autry in Birmingham, and some of the powers that be there. He would, it would have been easier. Mm-hmm. But the guy that owned Birmingham wasn't interested in selling. So our plan was to come to Jacksonville, 5-year plan, get it running, get it making money, sell it off at a profit, go back to Birmingham and see if you could buy the Barons then or something. But instead, at 5 years, we were still running red ink, and we both were getting to where we loved Jacksonville. So A little of that sand from Jacksonville Beach gets in your shoes, you never leave, I guess. That's what I've heard because I never left. And, we finally did by the 90s start getting it where we were making money with the baseball team, even at Old Wilson Park. We had fixed it up nice and fixed the ladies' bathrooms as a big thing. When I first started, I went up to Nashville and listened to Larry Schmitto, and I filled up 2 yellow legal pads of notes and ins and outs kind of thing to do. But the one that stuck with me the most, his axiom was, you do these 3 things, Pedro, and you'll be fine. The hot dogs have to be hot in the middle. The beer has to be cold, and the ladies' room has to be clean. If you do those 3 things, you'll have a very successful operation, and it's pretty much the truth.
Yeah, you did. Before we take a time out, why were the 90s good for the Jacksonville Suns? Like when you got out of the red, like why was that time frame good for you guys?
Well, I think we had shown people that we were, we'd say the first 2,000 fans kids get a real Louisville Slugger bat. Or every fan that comes tonight gets a baseball, and we did a lot of our big deal was built in those giveaway things. I think that people would go, would say, "Golly, this is awesome! We got to go another night where we can get something, seat cushion night." And we started bringing the chicken in twice a year. He was huge in the 90s.
Yes, he was.
And then the Superstars came along, and we said, "Who is this? Well, we'll try them out," and people loved them. So we started bringing them in more fireworks. I think a lot of that. But I think, too, the whole country got back into minor league baseball in the 90s. A lot of cities were building nicer new stadiums, and if you're in Jacksonville, even though we still have Old Wilson Park, and you talk to some family members in Birmingham or in Nashville, say, "Oh, they built us a new one up here." I just think minor league baseball became a bigger story nationally in the 90s, and it became a fun thing to do. Plus, the pricing for Major League Baseball got so far out, and it was still $3, $4, $5 to go buy. You buy a box seat for $5 at Wilson Park.
Yeah.
And Atlanta, or the new Tampa Bay team, was 25 or 30. So I think that had something to do with it, with the fact that minor league baseball was known to be affordable over a lot of other things you could do. So,
well, we're going to ask you a couple questions here. But one of them before we head to break. When you think of Jacksonville sports, for a guy who's been here now since '84, who do you think of? Who comes to mind?
Well, I mean, the Jaguars are the NFL. I mean, that's the thing. With the Jaguars, you have to say the Weavers. Wayne Weaver, but you have to include Dolores. They wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her, too. But Dean Beeman, we're the home of the PGA Tour because of Dean Beeman.
Yeah.
That's a big one, too. I mean, there's just too many to hardly say one. Artis Gilmore.
Yeah.
Of course, he was really from over toward the Panhandle, but he made it his home. Kind of like Chipper. Chipper was really from down south of here, but he sort of made it his home, although he never comes back. I mean, Bob Hayes is the one who really was from here and lived here most of his life and was world class, the fastest human.
Yes.
Tim Tebow's got to get mentioned in that list, I guess,
Well, you've hit them all, but the Bragans are on that list. And how did the Jags impact the Jacksonville Suns? And what about the transition to the new stadium, the baseball grounds, which later would become Bragan Field? More with Pedro Bragan when we come back on Storytellers of the 904. Most of us know how to throw. But you need to know what to throw. I'm not talking about footballs, baseballs, softballs. We're talking about those items you need to recycle. Republic Services explains it easy. Recycling simplified. 1. Know what to throw. When in doubt, throw it out. 2. Empty, clean, and dry those materials. It takes an extra minute, but it makes a big difference. And 3. Don't bag it. This makes the recycling process faster and more efficient. This is a look at the Republic Services North Florida Recycling Center. You can make this process even more efficient. By utilizing those 3 steps, Republic Services can help you become a better recycler in your home. Learn more at recyclingsimplified.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, get on the edge of your seats because this is an Action Sports Jax special presentation. Storytellers of the 904.
Pedro Bragan Jr. is the subject today on Storytellers of the 904, and he's a great storyteller and many stories to share. When he and his dad moved to Jacksonville to buy the Jacksonville Suns back in 1984, and they were affiliated with a bunch of pro teams. And we'll ask Pedro about that. Expos, Mariners, Tigers, Dodgers, Marlins. Of course, the Jacksonville Suns eventually become the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, as they are presently, once the Bragans sold the team to Ken Babby. We'll get into all that, but let's continue with our story. And you mentioned the Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, they are now like the team in Jacksonville. It's an NFL world we live in. But when they came aboard in 1994, 1995, when they start, how did you think that would impact your business? And were you welcoming to the idea or kind of to the idea?
Well, at the very first, it was the day they announced it, I was at the old Prudential building sitting with the marketing lady, Marjorie Flanagan, I think was that lady's name. And she ended up going to hospitals after that and did marketing and stuff. But we were sitting there, and it came down through the hall, hey, the Jaguars, we got a team. We're getting a team. We're getting an NFL team. And she said, oh, man, she had been doing a premium item night and a billboard on the wall and a program, a big package, one of our bigger ones. And she said, ooh, I know Mr. Nash, who ran Prudential at that time, has told them, that Touchdown Jacks group, if they get the team, he's going to be real big. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to keep my night or my sign on the wall, Pedro. I said, oh, Margie, don't tell me that. So I went back to the ballpark, and everybody was saying, oh, yeah, we're going to have the football. We're going to have football. And then within a week, the guy that was big Motorcraft, the Ford parts division, had sponsored several things with the team. And he said, I ain't getting a quarter of the money I used to get. It's all they're fighting right now, but the Ford's going to be the official car of the Jaguars, and my budget will be ranked. So that first year or two, it was a bad impact. You know, they were taking the money away from us. There was only so much marketing dollars and such. So I was, taken aback and a little angry about it. But in the long run, people increased their budgets. People said, hey, yeah, we got to give all this money to the Jaguars, but we can't just dump the Suns, and it became actually probably a help in the long run. But that first year or two, it was bad. Just, who else? We're going to lose another one. We're going to lose another one or something.
I bet.
I remember Mr. Bill Nimnick, not Billy, the boy running it now, but his daddy came over and he said, yeah, we're working on trying to, he said, I think Ford's going to be the car, but he said, don't you worry, Mr. Bragan. I'm keeping that sign on that left field foul line as long as I'm here, So, I mean, it was some back and forth there like that. It was good, nice to hear somebody like that with you. And Mr. Gay was always big with us and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad we got the Jaguars. It's great for the city.
Yeah, it's lifted everything up. But those early times, I could see that being a bit of an issue. Meanwhile, Wolfson Park on its last leg in the late 90s, obviously early 2000s. Give us a sense of what Wolfson Park was, because that's even before my time. I came in 2008. I hear about Wolfson Park. Well, and people love Wolfson Park.
Yeah.
But what was it like playing at that ballpark? And what it meant to Jacksonville, but kind of where it was in terms of a structure by that time.
The locker rooms had two giant 1959 model window units. And here's 30 hot, young 20-year-old bodies coming in there in July trying to shower after a game. And there's two big window units in this giant locker room. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous when they built it in '56 to have it like that. And the umpire's room had, I swear for God, an old box up here with a rope you pulled to flush. Something like from the 40s, I guess, you know. And I kept trying to. We just finally got the city to put in a regular throne for them, but it had, and the shower was just, you know, it was a 1956 structure, and it really hadn't been hardly anything done other than when something broke, got it replaced and stuff. The men's room had this long, I'm sure a lot of our listeners that got my age or more remember, was a long wall with all those little tiles on it, and you just had to step up on a thing and just in a big trough, more or less. Yeah. You know, it was old-timey.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why I would stand by that door and say, thanks for coming. Them ladies would be saying, I can't believe I let you talk me into coming down this nasty old place again. I ain't never coming back here and stuff. It was tough.
Yeah.
But and then we had issues with the field had been worn out, so we went to an all-grass infield trying to, you know, avoid rainouts. Rainouts were a terrible problem, and keeping a full staff tarp crew was hard. So all of a sudden, boom, rain comes on in the second inning, and you didn't have enough bodies out there to get the tarp on, and it ended up raining out the game and stuff. So it was anytime we had a big Friday or Saturday night, we were looking for a good crowd, and there was any chance of rain, we would schedule extra ushers. Okay. So we could hopefully have more, and extra bat boys, so we could have more bodies if we did need a tarp. We had a two-man, you know, the city was in charge of the field, not us.
Yeah.
So they would only have 2 city employees here every night. And them 2 guys couldn't bring the tarp out. We had to supply the manpower. So it was a mess.
Yeah. But you got that new stadium.
Yeah.
How big of a deal was that?
John Delaney grew up going to Wilson Park. So he resisted. He said, "Oh, I'll spend a few $100,000 on Wilson Park. What can we can fix it up, you know?" And eventually, sometime in the '90s, we did get rid of them window units, and they put a central unit in the middle of the locker room. It kind of messed it up where the coach, there was nowhere to stand out in the middle. You had this big unit out there in the middle, but he finally went on one of these chamber trips to Norfolk, Virginia. And they go do their chamber business and look at the port and do a lunch or whatever. And when they get in the mayor's limo on the way back to the airport, the mayor of Norfolk says, hey, wait a minute. Come on, Mayor Delaney. I want you to see our ballpark. And he rode them around the new one they had just built. So Delaney flies back with the chamber, and the next day or two, lady calls from over there. The mayor would like to see you and your father. How is Thursday morning at 9 o'clock? So we go up there at 9 o'clock Thursday morning. How y'all doing, Mr. Bragan? Hey, Pedro. Hey, listen, y'all are right. We do need a new ballpark. I saw that one in Norfolk, and it is something. And he said, so I'm going to do this Greater Jacksonville plan, and that's what happened. You know, I think a big part of it, too, though, I never really confirmed this with anybody, but I do think when Mr. Weaver got the Super Bowl, he probably came back and they went up in those suites at the old club they used to be and looked out this way. And I do believe in my mind, he said, Mayor, in 6 years when that Super Bowl comes, we can't have that old spaceship-looking Coliseum over there and that old 1956 old ballpark over there.
Yeah.
And I think that was why both those structures were gone by the time the Super Bowl got here. We had a nice new ballpark and a nice new arena.
Certainly gave it some motivation, no doubt about it. And that's
thank you, Mr. Weaver.
and a ballpark that's really stood the test of time, hasn't it?
Oh, man, like I said, they built that one in Birmingham, Hoover Met, in '88. Then they built one in Charlotte about '90. So I just knew we were going to get one. I started going around all of them. I went to Memphis and went through that ballpark when they built it a couple years later. And I went up to Toledo when they built a new one. I went all the way to El Paso to look at one. And Round Rock in Austin to get the ideas for that concourse, that 360 concourse and that upper concourse instead of where Wilson Park, you went up in the seats, then you went down underneath to get your food. and you'd be down there and hear them cheering, didn't know what was going on at the baseball grounds or Bi-Star Park or whatever. Now you can be in line to get a beer or hot dog and look out there and see a home run.
Yeah.
So, that was a idea I got from watching the other ones. And HOK said the best idea I had of all was to paint the cement block the same color as the brick. Because there's a little bit of brick at the ballpark, but there's a lot of concrete block.
Yeah.
But we painted the concrete block that brick reddish to match. And so, ball players even that come through here say, yeah, that ballpark's all brick.
Yeah.
But it's not.
And it's one that the players have always complimented at the ballpark.
But getting that 10 years or more of getting to go look at a bunch of them. And then to Mayor Delaney's credit, he sat down at the table and he said, okay, HOK, I want you to build the best ballpark you can for $25 million, like this boy here wants it, pointing at me. So,
wow. So you got
he put me right with HOK, and we got to design that's why the offices were where they were on Adams Street and the home club over on third base. And, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
The proudest thing I ever did in my life was to, get that ballpark built the way it got built.
How about that? Very good. 6 Southern League championships. How important, you mentioned it too, like way back when you brought the team, 84, the 86, what in that time frame, that it felt like winning was important. Now, you figured out in the 90s that promotion's really important, too, to get people in the seats, right? But you go to a baseball game in minor leagues, and I always say this, when people leave, they might care about the bathrooms, but they really don't care about the scoreboard that much.
You're right.
It felt like when you guys owned the team, winning was important. To win those Southern League championships really meant something, even if the bottom line looked okay. How important was it?
My dad, if you said, hey, you can win a championship this year and lose money, or you can finish second place and make $100,000, he'd say, just tell me where to send the money. I want to win. He wanted to win worse than anything. And we should have won some in the 80s with those great Montreal players, but, it never happened. They'd transfer them up to AAA, and they'd win championships and stuff. So finally we did. But, that same Larry Schmitto that told me about the 3 key elements, he said, you never want to go to the playoffs. What you want to do is you want to win opening night, you want to stay in first place all year, and you want to lose on Labor Day to fall out of the playoffs because you can't make money in the playoffs, Pedro. But it's so much fun to get a ring now and then.
We have a couple of those.
Then the next year you can have replica ring night for the kids to get a little ring, a little pot metal ring. And then plus I would order some big ones for everybody that spent a certain amount of dollars, sponsors with us, and go out in the winter and bring them a ring.
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Gay was so proud. He had a couple big Gator rings too, but he was so proud of those Suns rings and yeah, so it's fun, winning. Excuse me, winning doesn't help you that much. Well, it does in August, I guess, but it doesn't help you that much during the year. But it helps you that winter selling.
Okay.
When you're out there selling car dealers and insurance companies and whoever. Yes, we're the reigning Southern League champions. We won the champion. Jacksonville is a champion. That's where it's the biggest help, I think, and selling tickets for the next spring too. I think then, they won it last year. Let's get some tickets and go.
Yeah, that's great. 6 of them, by the way, Southern League championships.
The book, if I ever finish, is 6 Flags Over Bragan Field.
Ah, very nice.
If I can get permission.
I was going to say you might need to ask for permission on that one.
6 Flags Over Bragan Field would be a good title.
That's a great title of the book. All right, little lightning round for you here because I know there's a bunch to pick from. But do you have a favorite player that came through?
Larry Walker.
Okay.
I played golf with him. He didn't bring any clubs, but he hit left-handed, so we played out of my bag. And, it's a long time ago. And I tell you, I really liked the catcher in Philadelphia, Jake
Realmuto?
Jake Realmuto.
Yeah. He was with the Marlins organization, yeah.
Yeah. A quick aside here, JT gets pulled up to Tampa when the main catcher for the Marlins that year was Saltamalakia, big, heavy guy. And So they knew when they went to Tampa, Saltamalaca was going to DH, and the number 2 catcher was going to catch. So they took JT down there for 4 days, and he just warmed up catchers in the bullpen. Never gave him one AB. And he came back, and he had been hitting the heck out of it for us, hitting third. And he came back, and he struck out 3 times one night, and the next night he went 0 for 4, a couple of pop-ups. You could just see he was dejected. So I went down to the locker room. This had to be in August or July probably, I guess, late in the season or, on into hot. He's sitting over there in front of his locker just, And I said, JT, I think about 14 at least, maybe as many as 16. And he said, what are you talking about, Pedro? And I said, at least 14 teams would be better off having you to start as their catcher tonight than the one they got. You're ready. You are ready to be a big league catcher. You're going to be next year. So don't get your head down. Stay up. Keep your confidence. But I'm telling you, he said, you really think 14? I started listing them off, and stuff. And I said, yeah, 14, 15, or 16 would be better off with you than the guy they're putting in there. It was a time, it seemed like, in there when half the team's catcher would be gone by May, injured or hitting 180.
Yeah.
And they'd put the second guy in and stuff. Yeah, I mean, it was like, you could almost look at it now, the starting opening day big league catchers by September, half of them are changed, so.
Tough position.
Yeah, but
that
cheered him up, and we stayed in contact over the years since then too. So
I always heard he was a really good guy and obviously a very good player. You had
Oklahoma country boy kind of, hardcore country boy.
Real Muto. You had Stanton and Yelich during that time frame too. Unbelievable what the Marlins. You were raising for the Marlins, and the Marlins, of course, eventually traded them all away.
Ozuna. We had Ozuna in center and Yelich in left, and Stanton in right.
Unbelievable.
And Stanton was only there about a month that year.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were going to do a series of bobbles, like one of those where they stick together. End up getting them all.
Couldn't order them fast enough.
They were gone.
All right, long list of teams I mentioned: Expos, Mariners, Tigers, Dodgers, Marlins. Did you have a favorite affiliate?
Well, I'll tell you, Montreal was first class. They were owned by that billionaire, the whiskey man, Martin Brofman.
Okay.
They flew us to Montreal, put us in snazzy hotels. Me and Daddy went up there twice. And, the Mariners, Woody Woodward brought the Mariners in here twice from the other end of the country.
Wow.
Out of a spring training in Arizona. Both times he brought them was more like in the end of April when they'd do an East Coast trip and have an off day on a Thursday or something. And so he made you like him. Detroit, I love going up to Detroit and seeing that old stadium and things. And they were a good organization. All of them were really. The Dodgers were first class as anybody. I'm pretty sure that Osteen or O'Malley had it carved when they built Dodger Stadium. Never let it be said that the Yankees do anything better than the Dodgers.
Yeah.
They had that aura. What we used to be Hertz and the two.
Oh yeah, Avis or whatever.
Avis, we try harder or something. Yeah. They kind of had that Avis thing to them, but and then when the Dodgers said we're going to move out of Vero Beach and go to Arizona, I was sitting right there, and Daddy said, I don't blame you. You probably should have done that 25 years ago. But how is that going to be good for the Jacksonville Suns?
Yeah.
When we were right down the road from our top A ball team, we can go down there. It's easier to get y'all to come up here and play an exhibition. And then I asked him, I said, will you ever come back into Jacksonville to play an exhibition? And he said, well, we're going to have to think outside the box on what we can do for y'all. But an exhibition game is the top thing they can do. Yeah. So that's when we just started looking around and said, the Marlins are right down the road. Plus the best thing after so we ended up, and I looked at the A-ball team, and they had this guy, this right fielder named Stanton. It had 30-something home runs, and so we ended up, it fell out good that we got, and they were thrilled to get us. I think they were somewhere like Carolina where they had bad locker rooms and stuff in that stadium. And we had that nice new ballpark. Once we got the new ballpark, they were fighting over affiliations to come.
Yeah, good place for the players.
But, yeah, the Marlins worked out good. We had we won 2 or 3 with them.
Very good. All right, couple of things about the family. Your dad passed in 2012, obviously a great owner. You guys had a special relationship. The funeral service on the field, was that his idea? Your idea?
Mine, really. Yeah, he didn't ever say anything about what, but yeah, I just thought he deserved that. Laying in state at the ballpark was what Babe Ruth did in Yankee Stadium, and people did like it coming by and getting to see him in there, and then what we did on the field with
that was nice.
Dan was part of that. Sam was part of that too, and we had. I was just in a shock period because you got to be ready for it, but you never are. Mm-hmm. You never are, no matter what. But yeah, and then having the players stand there with bats and bring the casket under the bats like an old wedding ceremony used to do, and then they took him in the hearse. And when he got to the right field corner, the guy on the PA said, victory lap for Mr. Bragan, and went all the way around the warning track again.
It was nice.
It was wonderful.
The ringing of the bell, though, was his thing.
Yes.
Why? Why did that start?
We went to see Gerald Nichols was the big man at CSX. He had an office about a damn half of a floor. It had his main desk over in the corner with the windows and all. And he was over there on the phone, and over here was like a sofa and a fireplace and stuff. And then over here was a big conference table, and sort of like as a break area with maybe a low bookshelf next to it, one of those bells was sitting there. So he's over. The lady says, he'll be right with you when he gets off this phone call. He's talking to somewhere else, railroad people. So I just kind of eased over toward that conference table, and we both standing around there looking out the pretty window view, but Daddy reaches over there and says, "Wah, wah." And Mr. Nichols was trying to talk on the phone, said, "Hey, Bragan, quit." So when he gets off the phone and comes over, and Daddy said, "Oh, get me one of these for the ballpark, man. I'll ring it when they, And he said, "Oh, Bragan, them things are for governors and senators. Oh, they ain't for no baseball, man. No, them things ain't for no baseball. They're for governors, senators." And so we go on and do our talking and make our deal for what night's going to be CSX night and what we're going to give away and so forth. And there was a young guy that was my age that we did the real nuts and bolts, and Daddy and him just kibitz and stuff. So we go on, and it gets to be May, and Rick calls me and says, "Hey, listen, don't say nothing, but Mr. Nichols getting your daddy a bell. He wants to sneak it in there, and so what we did is we put it out at home plate with a big purple cloth over it. And so Daddy's in the office still. He was coming up to the seats, and I said, "Come on, Mr. Nichols wants you to come out to home plate. They're going to do a little something." "Oh, man, I'm fine. Right. No, come on, Dad. You got to go out there." So we go down and go through that old gate at the home dugout of Wilson Park, and Mr. Nichols and Rick are standing out there. As we start walking over there, Mr. Nichols snatches that purple cloth off, and Daddy just starts laughing. "Oh, you got that bell, yeah." So we haul it up there by where he sat, and that first night, I think he rang it every time we scored, or at the end of the game he rang it too, and then so for a few nights it was going to be every time we scored he's going to ring it. Well, about the 4th or 5th night it was there, we scored 3 in the first, 4 in the second, maybe 1 in the third, and then 5 in the 5th. And he said, the end of that game, he said, "You know what? I'm gonna start doing. I'm just gonna ring it on a home run."
Arms getting tired.
And then at the end of the game, and I said that makes more sense. So that became the tradition for the next 20 years or so.
That's awesome. Casey at the bat, we mentioned at the top of the show that you would go see kids, and obviously you get pressed for promotion and trying to kind of sell the Suns and get kids involved. But it was really a principal that you met that was the biggest impact of Casey at the bat, perhaps.
Well, I would do a lot of schools in those springs. I'd do like 3 a day. And I was over at the west side, and the lady that coordinated would do good about like giving you, I had West Riverside and maybe the Timaquana and Hyde Park that day. And it's always March when it's starting to get busy, and I'm sitting there thinking about, I got to get back and tell that guy to change that on the pocket schedule. And we didn't have the phone so good. I mean, I had some kind of phone, but it wasn't like now. And all the detail stuff that I needed to be doing at the office. So I get over to the Hyde Park, and I said, I'm going to cut this one a little shorter. So I get in there, and the librarian, I had been there the year before, and the librarian had told the principal about what a good thing it was. But the principal had been off to a meeting or something. So this year, anyway, I'm there. And she says, I'll go get them to call the kids and start getting them into the librarian. So then this little cute blondie sticks her head in the door, and I thought it was the librarian's helper or something. She said, oh, what's going on in here? What's going on here? I said, just get them kids in here, and I'll be fine. And so now when the kids start coming in, the teachers, I go back to Mr. Businessman, don't forget we got our 6th graders field trip. Here's the days and stuff. And then they get all the kids sitting there, and they got me a place to go up front, so the librarian says, okay, Mr. Brown, I think we're ready. Did you meet our principal, Miss Miller? And the little cute blondie's right there behind her. I said, yeah, we kind of met a while ago. All right. And I turned around, and I thought, ooh, I have stepped off in a hole here. I better do this one good. So I went up to the front, and I did it as good as I ever, like Moses writing on the rock, And when it was over, all the kids go off and everything, and she comes up there and said, Mr. Bragan, when we first met there, I didn't know about you for a minute or two, but I want to shake your hand because that's one of the best things I've ever had anybody come in from the outside. I've had some Jaguars and stuff, but I never had anybody get that kind of reaction out of the students and be as impactful as the things you were saying to them. And all. Anyway, I grabbed her hand and I said, well, how about dinner and a movie? And she blushed right on down through and said, oh, I couldn't do that. And I said, I don't see a ring. Why not? But she stiff-armed me for 6-9 months maybe. But sometime late in the next football season, we finally went out. And then
still are.
It was still going.
That's a great story. All right, we're wrapping up here. How close did you ever come to selling it before you sold it to Ken Babby?
I didn't, we never thought about it. As long as Daddy was alive, there was no thought at all. And as soon as he died, the accountants told me, we had some good accountants out of Philadelphia we used for years and years, and they said, you're going to get people coming at you. Just don't do anything for a year to 2. They're going to try to beat you up. They're going to play on your emotions. And they were right. We had several locals even come at us, and I kept telling them, no, not now. But, for a year or 2 after Daddy passed, I would always stay late and be working, especially in the fall and the early winter, working on ideas and stuff. The rest of the staff would blow at 5 o'clock, and I'd get up and walk down that hall to ask Daddy something, and he'd been in the grave a year or 2. So it became a thing where we were together with it for so long, with him gone. So after it had been a year or 2, I was kind of starting to think about it, and then here come Mr. Babby.
Oh, Jacksonville, don't you cry for me, because I'm going to end up with a big pile of Mr. Babby's money. Thank you once again, thank you.
And you never imagined you'd get the dollar figure.
Not even close. No, not really.
You remember going home that day when you got the offer? And like,
well, when he first came in, he offered lower than it ended up. But I went home. I said, no, I'm not interested in selling. I don't really want to sell. Well, think about it. Well, think about it. So I went home. I told my wife, I said, you know what? I might sell the team. She said, really? And I said, he came in here, but I think he'll go here. I can just tell he wants it. And so I went and told my mother, I said, you know what? I might sell the team. And she said, oh, your daddy wouldn't want that. And I said, well, if he saw this number, he might, Mother. And she just still was aghast. But it strung out for 6 months or something. It wasn't as quick as I have heard, him say some things about it, but it wasn't that quick. It strung out a little bit.
Well, and you've turned that, by the way, into giving back to baseball in the area and Better Baseball Foundation and your legacy and the family's legacy. So it seems like Daddy would be proud, and I know you guys are proud of what you've been able to do for the sport of baseball in Jacksonville.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've bought a few scoreboards around at different ballparks, and we helped Frank with the big, beautiful what is it? Bragan Baseball Complex at Ford Family Park down in South Side, and we're looking to do more. So
you can we'll share the website and everything, how you can get in touch with the foundation if you have something going on with the sport of baseball.
UNF, I helped UNF. They're going to make some more changes and improvements next year.
Yeah. That'll be
baseball
good.
Park there.
That's pretty cool to see the legacy continue on in that fashion as well. All right, the promotion that you never got done that you wanted to get done.
I wanted to think up the Savannah Bananas. I wish I would have. Guys, that guy, he was just, Savannah never could draw flies for years and years and years. And he decided to put them in goofy yellow uniforms and change a few rules. The thing I think is the smartest thing he ever did was that if a pop fly goes in the stands and a fan catches it, the batter's out. Doesn't matter if he's the Savannah guy or the visitor, the batter's out. And it made everybody in Savannah want to start going and bringing their gloves, dads and kids. So, the one promotion I wish I'd have thought of would be to have the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball and come up with a cool name for them or something. But all the rest of them, I was happy we did some great ones,
Yeah. You had fun with them. You did have fun Christmas parties, too.
Yes, sir.
Right there at the field. You cool with the Jumbo Shrimp now? I know that probably wasn't great at first, but has it settled in to be that's minor league baseball, or you still wish they were the Suns?
Well, old people my age and older all say, what in the world are they doing calling them Jumbo Shrimp? I told Mr. Babby, I said, if you lived in Jacksonville, you wouldn't call them shrimp. But since you live in D.C. and you just come back and forth, you're not really a Jacksonvillian, so you think it's cute. But I don't think it's cute. I don't mind if he didn't want to stay Suns, but not these nasty bugs that crawl in the bottom of the river, something. But that's part of the modern. That's the millennials love it. I see more shrimp hats than I ever saw sun hats out in the street. You do see a lot of shrimp hats, don't you?
Yeah, marketing is the way of the world.
Yeah,
and it has
so,
worked.
More power to him.
Do you go to some ball games?
I went to the second game this year. I'm going to try to go again in August. I'll go at least 2 or 3 times. I love the ballpark. I still have a lot of my former employees are there.
Are you glad you sold it?
Yes. I wouldn't have this beautiful house on the ocean if I hadn't, Brent. I wouldn't have the financial independence.
I like that. One last one. You brought up the Jaguars, so here's a question. Pick the year the Jaguars are going to win the Super Bowl. Forecast into the future.
Well, when they first hired this new regime, I thought they're too green. They don't have enough experience. And it scared me, and it still might. But I love the way they maneuvered the draft, and we just have to see if they really are the genuine article. I'm gonna say 28.
Ooh.
When is it finished? When is the new one finished?
They'll open it in 28.
I'll say 28 with the new park.
Wow, how about that? Well, we're going to visit this conversation at some day and see if Peter Bragan Jr. is right. Pedro, you the man. Great to catch up with you. Glad you're doing well. You look fantastic. Best to the family. And on behalf of everybody in Jacksonville, thanks for all you've done for baseball here in the River City.
Well, thank you, Brent. It's great to be here. I'm glad to be a part of your podcast.
All right, that's Storytellers of the 904, Peter Bragan Jr.